turns out that when you make something truly for yourself, you're doing the best thing you possibly can for the audience. So if we're making art, we're making it's almost like a diary entry. So it could I be concerned that someone else might not like my diary entry? It doesn't make sense. It has nothing to do with them. My diary entry has nothing to do with anyone else. So everything we make as artists are essentially diary entries.
Welcome back to Turn and Burn. I'm Sarah Williams, and my co-host Fred Gordon and I today are talking to Dylan, Chef Dylan from Dallas. We're very excited to have him on. Thanks so much for joining us, Dylan.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dylan, I appreciate it again, man. Hey, listen, so I want to talk to you a little bit about your story. I've never understood or really known how the pastry world works, except for, watching the Food Network Cake Wars or something like that. But can you kind of talk to us a little bit about the difference with pastry chef as it relates to the hotel side of things where you've worked?
Absolutely. So, in restaurants, there's one kitchen, and there's a grill, there's a garde manger, there's a pastry section, right? So that pastry section will provide all of the desserts for that one specific restaurant. Typically in hotels, they'll have one pastry shop for the entire operation. So whatever outlets you might have, whether it's banquets, any type of restaurants, um, pool lounge, club lounge, things like that, all of the desserts and breakfast breads will come out from that pastry kitchen. Um, that's just how it works over there. You have one
Yeah.
operation doing everything for the entire hotel.
How do you guys
hmm
determine, what it's like? How are you going to prepare how many pastry chefs or, items that you need for that day?
Yeah. So daily, right? We'll have, since it's a bigger operation, we have a designated chef for each of those areas, right? So say, if you have a steakhouse, you'll have a designated chef for that steakhouse, and they typically send an order the day before. So that'll
Mm.
be like, okay, we need X amount of this, X amount of that, and kind of go based off of that. Working in restaurants, hotels, it's a little different than working in banquets because restaurants, they'll do it on the daily, they'll make it fresh every day, whereas banquets, right, it'll be like you have a production of 1200 or 1300 of the same dessert, and you have 5 or 6 day notice for that. So that's typically how it is. For the banquet side, they'll print out actual like form that says, okay, this client he's hosting a party for 1,000 people, and this is what he wants, and you just kind of go and ticking off as you go.
Because you guys have rooms you have to take care of, then you have the food side of things. Is that something that's added stress for you guys as it relates to the operation side of things?
Yeah, I would say, especially whenever you have extremely picky clients,
Hmm.
uh, you know, when a person is spending so much money on, you know, items, they want it to be up to their expectation. So that's why uh, some chefs tend to be a little anal about it. They're gonna
Hmm.
like pinpoint even the small details that the normal person probably wouldn't see, right? But there's times when I see desserts and I'm like, oh, it's a little broken on the side, or I'll like notice small stuff, and that's what I feel working in this kind of environment is, because you can't, you probably could mess up on a four top who's only ordering one dessert, right? But if you mess up a 1,000 person event, that's a lot of money you're wasting. So, and the responsibility has to fall back on someone. So definitely, yeah, some more added stress, but it's about what I've learned about pastry is it's more about taking your time to make sure the item is perfect, right? Because it's never going to be perfect, but make sure the item is as detailed as it could be, rather than on a hotline where you're just like constantly just throwing food in the window and sending it out.
So, how many years have you been in hotels specifically, and can you talk a little bit about like this scale of the different sizes of hotels you've worked in, and why you why you feel most comfortable right now in your career, like
hmm
working for a hotel?
Yeah, so for hotels, I've been working for about 7 years. It's so starting off, I started off working for more luxurious boutique hotels, which they tend to be smaller in the room wise, but they tend to have nicer restaurants, and I feel like I could have learned a lot more skill and stuff there. So that's why I kind of started out doing that. Um, Started out from a hotel from 300 rooms. I think that was my first hotel that I started at, and I kind of stuck with the boutique for maybe 4 years until I got kind of over it, because when you're at a smaller property, there's not as many people to do stuff, and it's very hard, it's very difficult to achieve what you want and to get to those goals, because there's more competition in those properties. Currently, right now, I'm working for a hotel that services 1,600 rooms, and I believe that moving to a large hotel was probably the best choice I've ever made, because there's room for growth, there's room for everything, there's room for everyone to shine, and that's something that I wasn't getting at boutique hotels.
Dylan, you have a unique story background, and I just love how you kind of came through this entire industry, and it's very unique in the sense that I've
Thank
never
you.
seen it before. But um, you have a you have something unique that I want to hear about as it relates to you've kind of worked both sides, and we had a previous guest that we talked about corporate side versus independent, right? You kind of had
Hmm.
a chance to work both. Can you share with us some of your experience and kind of what you took away from both a corporate structure side of the industry versus more of a mom and pop, smaller scaled size type of corporation?
Absolutely. So, whenever I started off in this industry, I feel like I started at kind of like a awkward crossroads, because it was a time right before social media, like Instagram was getting big and everything, and everyone was just posting pictures, and nowadays that's all people look at, right? So when I was in college, I had a professor who told me, he said, if you want to work in this industry, work while you're in school. If you can handle that stress, then you can handle anything. So I said, okay. So I took it, right? He landed me a job in Miami, and I would take two. So I didn't have a car in Miami. I would take two buses to and from work every day. I would go to school in the daytime and work at nighttime for a mama papa restaurant, because me back then, my mindset was, in a mom and papa restaurant, there's going to be creative freedom. There's going to, as a little boy dreaming all this stuff up, I'm just like, I have this image in my head of what I want it to be. It wasn't anything like that. It was like, you don't get creative freedom until you start moving up, right? So, yeah, I worked for this mom and papa restaurant. And it's a lot different from corporate setting, because in corporate, if you don't like something, you could always go and talk to HR about it, or there's always that structure. There's like a ladder that you could go up to. That's not the case in mama and papa restaurants, right? It's like, this is the way it's done, and that's it. Like, if you don't like it, there's like another person lined up for your job, right? So, getting started into this industry, I actually started off as a garde manger cook. I wanted to be like savory. I thought it would be like cool, to see everything, and charcuterie boards were the next hot thing, and all this stuff was just upcoming, when I the reason that I left my first mama papa restaurant is because I had to do my internship, right? And because I was majoring in culinary arts, but I had a minor in event management. And for the minor, you had to take like an internship, externship, So I ended up working for this wedding event planning company, and all I would do all day is make bouquet of flowers, and I was miserable doing it. I hated it. I was like, the only thing I want to do is I want to be in the hot kitchen. I want to be getting my ass chewed out by the chef. Like, I want to be in the in the trenches. That's that was my mindset. I didn't want to be making flowers. It was boring to me. So I passed my internship, and I never went back to weddings. I was like, not for me. And I went to another mom and papa restaurant that was very, very short lived, because that's kind of where I grew my passion for pastry. One day, one of the pastry cooks didn't show up, and the chef had asked me, "Hey, can you come and assist for a little bit?" And I just fell in love. I was like, like, this is an art, It's an art what you guys do here, and it was a little more slow paced than the hot side, right? It was more detail oriented, and I love that. I love doing stuff that's very tedious. So I remember I asked the chef if there would be a possibility that I could get into there. And again, this is where the Mama Papa restaurant thing, he was like, no, there's no room for you over there. So we can't have you. So I said, okay, well, I'll find somewhere that will. So that's kind of where I started my journey into hotels.
So that's a beautiful segue to the next question that I have for you, which is that the less than glamorous side of the hotel restaurant world. And you have a tremendous story about that side of things and how your experience as a hotel chef helped you out. Can you tell us that story? Tell the audience that story.
Of course, yeah, yeah. So this was right after COVID, right? And I was dying at home. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go and start working in another hotel. So I found another hotel. I helped them open it. And in Texas over here, I know probably in New York it's not as bad, but as soon as like a inch of snow comes or something, everything shuts down, like everything's just like, okay, we're closing off everything, batten down the hatches, all that stuff. So we had a very, very bad ice storm about 2 years ago. And as soon as ice, I'm sure Fred could tell you that as soon as ice happens in Texas, people are sliding around and the roads are shut down and everything's just awful, So I remember the day perfectly, right? I went to work at nighttime. I was like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to check on my dog. I'm going to make sure that he's okay because there was supposed to be a bad ice storm coming through that night. Um, I just got my ass handed to me. It was so busy. And I come home completely like a pipe had just busted in my apartment. Everything was flooded. It was so bad. And my dog was just on the couch. I was like, thank God he's still here, right? Like he was just happy to see me. So clearly I couldn't stay in my apartment that night, and I didn't know what to do. I'm like, do I move anything? Do I take my PC with me? Like, what do I do in that situation? So it kind of became like a fight or flight. So I took what was important. I took my dog. I took my phone. I took my keys to my car, and I just, hauled it back to the hotel where I just got my ass handed to me. So I go there, and I like the entire way over there. I just remember I am in tears. My whole everything that I've worked for, it's just in water. It sucks to see that. And I get to my apartment. I tell my chef, and he's like, you're more than welcome to stay here in the hotel. And that was like a lifesaver, because when you're in a situation like that, the last thing you worry about is where am I going to stay, And I'm in Dallas over here, so yeah, I take my dog up to my room, and as soon as I get there, the whole electricity in the hotel just goes out. It's like a black zone, right? And the thing is that in your home it's different, right? It's just you're one person. In a hotel, you have 400 people who are still there. They have nowhere to go. Everything around them is closed. Like they're probably in the same situation you are, not the busted pipe or whatever, but they probably can't catch a flight back home or whatever it is. So I get to my room, I get my dog, and I'm just like, what am I gonna do here? There's no power, my phone's about to die. So I go to the bar and I do what anyone would do in a stressful situation. And I had me, one too many drinks over there. So yeah, I went to the back of the kitchen, we shared some stories with friends, and we just kind of, we're like a big family during that time. It became we became closer than we normally are, right? Because this, it kind of occurred to me like this is my family, right? Like I hang out with them more than I see my dad or my brothers or my sisters, and it really hit me in that moment when we're working under candlelight, right? We're all wearing our sweaters and hoodies in the kitchen, and it's really bad. So that entire night, everyone was like, "Yeah, the power's out. Let's get fucked up," and that's exactly what we did. We just sat at the bar and we drank till I don't know 3, 4 in the morning. We're just there drinking, and I'm like, "Well, guys, I have to be back to work, right? Because I'm already at work at that point. I'm like, I have to be back at work at 5, right? So I go to my room and I knock out for maybe 20 minutes, and I wake up and I just have I'm probably still drunk when I do this, and it's it's like awful. But I'm like, I have to go back to the kitchen, like I have to give them my end of the deal, which was to work that morning. So I went there. Whole thing was like black. I was literally like the whole hotel was black. It was dark. There was no light. I had little candle lights, little tea lights next to my station, and I'm just like, okay, well, what can I do, right? I try to turn on the gas. Everything's shut off, right? It's not like it's just like magically on, right? As soon as the power goes out, a lot of stuff that you think works, it doesn't. And I remember just being in the kitchen, like, well, what do I do, right? Like, no one's here. It's early in the morning. Everyone, even probably the managers, were still drunk. Like no one was there. But we still had guests coming down, and I remember perfectly. I was in my hoodie, and I was trying to get the. We had a wood fire, like a grill, kind of, where you just threw wood on there and started like. I'm like, that I could do, right? That's like a survival skill. It's pretty good to know. And yeah, so I just remember starting this wood fire grill that we had. It was a very, very small one. And I have some clients coming into the kitchen and being like, "Hey, can we get coffee? Like, can we?" I'm like, "Dude, I I don't even know how I would start doing that." But I'm like, "Fuck it." I just got a big pot of water and I put it on there, and it probably wasn't the best coffee that they drank, but if you want coffee in the moment, that's what you're gonna drink. So no one ended up showing up to the kitchen, maybe until 7 or 8 o'clock, right? It was just kind of like, fuck you, you're on your own on that. And it was kind of like flight or flight mode, like it was very much that. People are, you still have a full hotel full of people that have to eat. They have to, you still have to cater to that. So that's kind of where my hospitality came from in that moment. It was making sure that these people got fed and had something warm to drink, right? Because no one wants to be in a situation, right, where you don't have that. You don't have an option, things like that. So that's kind of where it came from, right? It's from a place of love because something tragic had just happened to me, and what could I do to make someone feel a little more comfortable during a extremely stressful situation?
Yeah, that to me just speaks so much to your character and what you really love about doing this. I mean, one of the things that we talked about in our pre-interview was, that you really love what you do, and I think it just comes through in the way that you speak about this, and in the way that you were able to say, I don't like this part of the industry, but I want to, I really
Hmm.
love this. I love the creative part of it. We're going to talk about what you've done with that creativity on social media in a few minutes, but because really the work that you've done, the evidence of the work that you've done that you've put out there is absolutely stunning. And that was one
Thank
of the
you.
things that really drew me to you, just in terms of wanting you on as a guest, right? That that you're really an artist and you clearly take pride in that, but your heart through these kinds of things, that even though you could have just said, fuck everybody, and like, I'm going to stay in bed with the dog, like
Yeah.
you were like, no, I'm going to, I mean, and you didn't, I mean, I don't know how it was in the moment, but like that you weren't resentful. Like you were like, yeah, of course they're all
Hmm.
drunk and they're like wherever, and but I
Yeah.
got to take care of these people. Like, no, you're right. I mean, the fight or flight
Yeah.
piece of that, but that just speaks so much to your spirit, and the fact that that you were willing to be generous at a moment when you felt like you had kind of lost maybe everything
A
that you,
lot.
like you said, had worked
Yeah.
for. Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
so it's just tremendous what that says about we've seen it in other instances in the industry, right? That these people that just have huge hearts, and that's why they show up all the time, because it's not an easy job to have, and you really
Yeah.
have to, on the fly, be ready to make decisions even on your own. I mean, in that moment you had to
Hmm.
be the leader, right? Not just somebody who's a part of a
Some
big
cook. Yeah.
kitchen staff. Yeah, I mean, you had
Yeah.
to be the leader, and you stepped right up, which is tremendous. And
Hmm.
even if it wasn't the best cup of coffee those people had ever had, they had coffee, which I think for most of us in those instances, especially if anyone's ever gone camping, like that's just, you just need
Yeah.
something, like you just need some, because when you plug in that in-room coffee maker and it doesn't work, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's just, it's so incredible, that story. So So what ended up happening at the end of that? Like, how long were you guys without power? Like, how did the rest of that sort of pan out?
So we were without power at the hotel. I believe it was like 4 days, and
Wow.
I remember it was really funny. So I actually just got back from vacation right now. I did a road trip to Chicago with my dad, and my dad was telling me, "Oh, you have to watch this show called The Bear," and I'm like, "Oh my God, I live it every day, Dad. I don't need to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need to watch it." And he was telling me about this episode where I guess the fridge had went out and it's based in Chicago, so they're throwing
Yep.
all the food outside. That's what we actually had to do, right? Like it was below freezing over here. So once the electricity goes out, you have walk-ins full of food, full of steaks, probably thousands of dollars worth of
Mhm.
product in there, and it's either you lose it or you figure out how to use it. And I just remember me and my friends as we're drinking, right? We're just like grabbing steaks and chickens and throwing them outside and just leaving. I mean, because what's gonna happen? It's colder outside than it was inside at the moment. So, yeah, that's exactly how we did it. But yeah, the hotel was out of power maybe 4 days, and once the Texas sun comes out, it just kind of melts everything, and power came back on. Everyone was like, "Yeah, they're in the lobby all drunk and everything still." But it's really humbling to know what you have, and once power goes out, what you don't have, and things that you thought were a normality don't suddenly become, suddenly aren't that. It's like,
Yeah.
how am I gonna make this work? How am I gonna get this done, basically?
You know, Dylan, you brought back a memory, and you don't forget things like that. But I now that you told that story, yeah, that was a rough time for us in Texas. But it's a couple things I took from that. Right, it's you're right. It's amazing when your back is up against the wall what you're able to accomplish. And I think
Hmm.
in this industry, we all have a moment where it's a defining moment where that happens and you say, you know what, this is me, this is what I'm going to do. And it brings out a side of you that you didn't know you had,
Yeah.
and it really makes you, I can do this. It's one of those I can do this moment, and you need that, to hit rock bottom, if you will,
Yeah.
to see what you're really capable of doing and being able to pull off. And you need that in this industry because you got, as you know, nothing ever goes according to plan, right? And so it's you're
Absolutely.
always you're always having to pivot and go in a different direction. And so, those moments help define your character in this industry.
Yeah.
And you need those moments to kind of be successful, honestly. It's
A
crazy,
hundred
but
percent.
yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of leads to, the only thing that's certain is that something will go wrong.
Mm,
It's kind of and you just kind of learn how to adapt and you learn how to embrace those moments because that's what defines you as a
mhm,
culinarian. It's
mhm.
how you deal under the pressure. I think that that's the most important aspect of it.
It's not about the fires that are going to come up, right? Because we know they're going to happen. It's how
Hmm.
many fires are you going to have to put out that night, right? And the more you
Yeah.
can prevent, the better off you'll be. And that's kind of the, the take home in this industry. You're going to have them. It's just a
Hmm.
question of how many you're going to have, and how bad
Yeah.
how bad are they going to get, right?
Yeah.
Well, and
Absolutely.
what's your break point, right? Like at what
Yeah.
point do you just say I have to step away? I would assume that in a hotel environment you would like you just took a vacation that you have a little more flexibility with time
Hmm.
off when you need it as opposed to like a mom and pop where there's five people that work there and so assuming that you're covered when you leave to be able to take some time away is I think important in any industry but absolutely with what you guys do and it's such a rarity that anybody in that industry really gets to step away for any amount of time, and
Yeah.
really just reset and rejuvenate.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's so much burnout, because of all the kind of snap decisions and whatever that you have to make.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
having that time around holidays and stuff, people like it really baffles me how people still go out for like Christmas Day, like they're at restaurants and stuff, right? It's like they're almost flocking to it, and the person who's you need to be grateful for the person who's in the back working. If you tend like if you do choose to go out, that person, he's probably giving up spending time with his family or his kids or whatever the situation might be to be able to serve you a meal where you could enjoy with your family for Christmas Day. So, it's kind of a little a little awkward sometimes because it's like this person's working, but I'm not, but I'm still gonna go and give him business. So
Yeah. We want to talk a little bit about how you found pastry, and it speaks completely to what Fred is talking about, where that resilience and your ability to kind of adapt in a situation, is so, again, part of your character, but also part of people who survive in this industry.
Yeah, so starting whenever I left the mom and papa restaurant, they were basically telling me that unless someone were to leave in pastry, that then I wouldn't be able to get in. So, it's either, okay, well, I'm not about to stay here and do what you want me to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. So, I kind of transitioned into luxury boutique hotels to work in pastry. And I started at, like how everyone does, I started at the bottom and just slowly worked my way up in there. And I remember my chef at the time who he had told me one thing that sticks with me till this time. You could always teach a baker how to cook something, but it's very difficult to teach a cook how to bake something. So it's and it's very true. Baking, it's sometimes tedious. It's sometimes like, oh, my egg whites won't rise, or you know what I mean? Like it's sometimes like it's a science. Everything is down to the grams, whereas you're making a steak, you could just add some more salt, or and kind of you could fix your mistake in the moment. But what really defines a good pastry chef is one who's able to not follow a recipe per se, but follow the signs, right? That was another important thing that I wanted to learn, was cooking without a recipe, was, looking at signs, looking when something's done, not because the recipe says 12 minutes and it's not finished, maybe it needs more time, maybe your oven's too cold, maybe, so in that sense, so that's kind of where I got a lot of my pastry skills, I would say, is starting off at these small boutique hotels, and I just slowly worked my way up to bigger properties and to become a sous chef eventually. When I came to Texas, right, and I started working out here, I started working for a boutique hotel over here, and and I don't know if you know much about Dallas hotels and stuff, but people have been here for a long time. Like the people who work in kitchens tend to have been there for probably longer than I've been alive, and it shows, right, in their skills and everything. God bless them, because they're the ones who started everything. And so I decided to come to Texas maybe about a year before COVID had happened, and when it happened, I got laid off from my job, and I was like, what do I do? I was just kind of bored at my house, and I remember being with my sister one day, and I'm like, why don't we bake something? Why don't we bake stuff, right? Like in a time that's so uncertain, I know that if I put butter and eggs and flour and bake, things like that, if I put it in a mixer and I bake it at 350, it's going to come out as a cookie, right? Or something, right? I know that baking's certain. And in a time that's so uncertain like COVID, that's what I wanted to do. So that's kind of how I started my Instagram, and I started kind of giving back to the community a little bit, right? Times were hard for everyone, like everyone. And even when I went back to the kitchens, I found myself calling friends back in Miami, and I'm like, are you guys going through shortages? Like, what's going on? Is my kitchen the only one that's understaffed? I wanted to feel like I'm not the only one going crazy here, like, because it really tested me. COVID was that was probably one of my most stressful times in my career, was COVID. And it showed a lot of the places, you were short staffed. I have never seen so many people come and go like I did during that year, during COVID. It was so bad. You would have dishwashers coming in asking for $25. It was like unheard of at this time. When I first started, I remember all the chefs had the mindset like, we're going to break you down and we're going to build you back up to the way that we want it, right? As soon as COVID happens, that was out the window, right? Like, I don't need you, you need me. And that's kind of how it became. And the people who came by were people like that. It was people who didn't want to be in this industry, who were just coming for a paycheck, who didn't share the same passion that I did. And I felt that to be the most frustrating thing. It's like, you could create art in a time that's so bad. Why don't, but you're just coming for money? Like, money comes and goes. So yeah, back to baking thing, we ended up baking, I believe it was Rice Krispie treats and cookies, and we packaged them in nice little bags, and we just kind of went to a park and we're delivering Rice Krispie treats and cookies to like random people, right? Like, hey, I know times are hard, but this cookie's really good, so you should give it a try. And that's kind of how I started the Gay Chef. You know, it's that it's based around it's a safe space. It's a place where you're able to express your opinions, where you aren't crazy. Like we're all going through tough times, but here's a little piece of my art. Here's my addition to that.
Dylan, that's a pretty cool story, man. And like you said, it did teach us a lot, and we're still learning from it. And people had to pivot and figure things out. And those
Yeah.
that did, people like yourself and success stories came from it. And man, like I said, it was it was interesting from the beginning when I heard about you and your story and how you kind of came about to this point and your background. It's just totally unique and different from what I normally see. So it was
Thanks.
definitely a pleasure, hearing about you and your stories and learning the hotel side of things, which again, that's something that I always wanted to know about. So I appreciate you
Yeah,
shining light on
absolutely.
that. Absolutely, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and
Thank
then
you.
yet another example. We've been so fortunate already with the guests that we've had and the people that we're already talking about having on, that yet another example of someone with such a big heart, and it just comes through. So what's your Instagram handle, so if people want to check out your beautiful work and what you have going on, they can go and find you?
So my Instagram handle is @thegaychef. That's me, and you'll know it's me because I have my big old face picture on there. So I have my face on on the little circle right there. So you're gonna know it's me, I promise.
It's marketing, Dylan. It's marketing.
Yeah.
That's right.
I
We're
know,
all
that's all
having to
it
do
is.
it, right? Yeah, no, we're all doing it now, whether we want our big faces out there or not,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, no, that's exactly what we're doing
Smart.
here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you, and I'm so grateful for your time. And we are going to be tagging Dylan's Instagram everywhere that we'll be promoting this, and so you guys can
Awesome.
look out for him and support his work. I just think he's such an artist, and thank you so much for your time today, Dylan. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Hey, Dylan, one last question for you.
Uh-huh.
Corporate or mom and pop? Which one would you go with if you had to
Oh,
choose one?
corporate 100%. Unless it's your
Well,
own mama pop, then keep it.
heard it. Got it.
Good answer. For what you do, good answer.
Yeah.
And you get vacations on top of it.
100%.
Vacations
Yeah.
are good.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
guys. Thank
All
you guys
right.
again so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. And now for the shameless plug. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider buying us a $5 round or becoming a monthly supporter by visiting turnburn.co, selecting support, and clicking the Buy Us a Beer button.
Please also stay tuned for podcast updates by subscribing to our newsletter at turnburn.co and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Turn Burn Show. Thanks again for joining us, and stay out of the weeds.